Welcome to Making Room, a podcast inspiring people to accelerate change by being a catalyst, honoring creativity, and acting with courage. We are making room for the greatest potential of our community.
Welcome, you are welcome here. Welcome to this open door, dear. Our hands are reaching out for you. The floor is clear and we've made room for
All right, welcome back to Making Room. We got our core crew here today, Brandon and Shivani, and we just got off a great conversation with Nate Sally. It was so inspiring. We almost ran through Brian's brick wall here first.
That's right. That's right.
I think, so go check that episode out, and we dove into courage, creativity, all kinds of things, purpose, and just start, Shivani, with you. Like what things really struck you and hit home from that conversation?
Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely such a fun conversation. It was a good mix of serious and listening to song and joking around, especially about University of Michigan. But I think all three of us kind of stopped and wrote down the same quote. So I'm going to start with that one where he kind of said, "The perfect time is ignited by action." And that really struck me as, there's certain scenarios and situations where we can be like, later on regret that we didn't take that step or didn't take that action, or feel like it was bad luck. But there are always these opportunities that are knocking at our door, and if we choose to not see them or not open our eyes to them, that's one step. But then if you see the opportunity and you don't actually move and take action or bring people along the journey with you, it's a missed opportunity, right? So that definitely struck me as something that I really enjoyed hearing, because it's not just about timing, it's about moving and doing as well. The other thing that I really was struck by was his commentary on how he uses his song and creativity to deliver a message that he can also deliver in a speech. So it makes me think a lot about like when we were learners and how you have different types of learners, right? The people that process things better by written word, and those that need a visual, and some that need to just like listen and hear. And as we talk about even our work in community change and community development, making sure that we are always addressing different audiences, because people will process things very differently, and you can deliver the same message. And when we tap into that creativity, we're able to deliver that same message, like we've talked about over and over again with our different mediums, right? Whether it's in song or art or written word or the art of cooking together, right? Like you can deliver messages in very different ways. And I think that's a good reminder to us as leaders to remember that that's something that we need to think about as we're building momentum.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'll start with the same quote that Shivani started with, which was the time ignited by action. And I'll take a slightly different angle. What I appreciated about it, and I've had this happen in my life, is that retroactively people looking back will say, "Oh, you had perfect timing. This worked out so well for you." But in the moment, you made a decision that everyone's like, "Why are you doing that? That doesn't make sense. Why in the world would you do that? Why would you take a step back? Why would you take a salary cut? Why would you give up something that seems so great?" And then because of the action you take, you make it work out, or you feel that you're being called to do something, led in this direction, and you do it, and then it works out because you went on that leap of faith, and everyone looks back and says, "Oh, that's such great timing." But it wasn't necessarily that way at the beginning, so I thought that was a great point. The other point, one of the things that I'll mention, he talked about his uncle and just seeing his uncle graduate and what that did for him. The tie between education and family is something that I have focused a lot on, and I don't think we've talked about in this. But my great-grandfather was a principal, and he graduated from college, which, if thinking about it, given where he was one generation removed from slavery. That is a huge feat. And not too long ago, we happened to stumble upon his college graduation. And it was exactly 100 years to almost a month from his college graduation to my law school graduation. And again, it goes back to that purpose where before I was like, I kind of pass it off. And it was like, this is his. And you think about Nate's 100 years from now, what his generations will do. It's kind of like, this is the fulfillment of all that work, and who God knows what he had to go through to get that. back in early 1900s,
Yeah.
late 1800s. So that resonated with me a lot as well.
Yeah, the role of family and just the I mean, I'm sitting here just so inspired by the opportunity we have as leaders, by our lives and what we can create through the testimony of people just watching what we're doing, you know. And I was struck with Nate talked about when he transitioned from recruiting to coaching consulting, which, you know, knowing him and having been there through some of the conversations, that was a super hard decision for him.
Yeah.
But for him to have that clarity, and I can imagine being one of his children in that
Right.
room where he talked about sitting them down and saying, hey, daddy's had a 10-year run at a successful corporate job, something I'm feeling inside of me, and I'm going to give this a shot. And I was struck by what that could mean for his kids,
Right.
and the man and the father that he is, and the opportunity that we have. But for him to take that time and pause, and not just get run into building the consulting, but to sit his kids down, right, and say, hey, y'all, at some point in life, something you're going to feel. And to your point, Brandon and Shivani, it's like, it's not going to make sense. It is
Right.
not the perfect timing, but you've got to be ignited by the action. And I'm going to be there to support you for that, you know?
Yeah, I was actually thinking, I'm curious how you feel about this too. I was actually thinking when he said that, I was like, you know what? Maybe we need to sit our kids down and say, why are you doing this podcast? Like, we told them, like, we're doing a
Yeah.
podcast, we got a phone. But I was thinking, oh man, maybe I need to tell them, look, I'm just stepping outside my comfort zone. So instead of always telling you, hey kids, you need to step outside your comfort zone, you need to try something new, maybe you can model that in a way by saying, this is how I'm doing that. Right, so it was a good point. So I guess he's also a catalyst for us.
For us,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
right.
think that example of just being a role model or being a living example and showing like this is going to be tough and not everything is going to be easy and there might be bumps along the way, but I'm going to do this because this is my purpose and this is what I want to be true to, and this is me being courageous, me being fearless and saying, you know what, I'm going to do it, and you're going to watch me on this journey, and it might not always look pretty, right? But
Right.
this is what we're going to do. So yes, to your point, I think we should talk about the
Yeah.
podcast with our kids and be like, this is not mommy
right.
being a doctor. This is something totally
Yeah.
different.
That's right.
This is why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And her seeing what we've heard so far, right, from all our listeners, including my mom and others, is the full scope of your talents, right? Obviously, you're a renowned pediatrician, an expert in resiliency and early childhood development, childhood obesity. I've known you as that, a wonderful mom. They love you, but just like I've been excited in this process of like, and I knew it intuitively, but Pada said, your husband, she is opening up, like
Yeah.
you're bringing your full voice, and there's no accident that we talked about the word creativity as honoring the way people see the world in their highest expression. So I feel like by you doing that for yourself,
Yeah.
that there's no choice, but the people watching you and your kids and all our kids are going to say, hey, mine might not be speaking, but something inside me is taking me to music or drawing or law or this, and
Right.
I'm going to have the courage and capacity to honor that, even though it's hard, and people will probably doubt me and say things like, the timing's not good, or
Yeah,
that doesn't
right.
sound right. And that hit me too with Nate, of like how he could, being someone working with corporations now, he said, you know, well, I could have said, well, let me just put this rapping thing aside. Yet and I didn't know that he'd written 300 songs.
Yeah,
Like,
I didn't know that.
that's
Right.
crazy. And so for him to now say, I keep coming back to this word honor, and it's such an important word, because by him doing what he's doing in speaking and consulting, he's honoring a certain audience. By him expressing his purpose and courage through lyrics, he's honoring, as he said, people he grew up with who might communicate better through that way. And like you said, all of you said, with change, if we begin as a community to stop thinking about there's a right way to express or say things, there's just how do we honor lyrical expression and healing through the arts and corporate and creative and organizer and, you know, food, people in the food industry, just all industries, like, and really begin to just have those conversations where we push each other to get to the best answer.
I think you speak to honoring, people's purposes, and so many times throughout multiple podcasts we've heard about people being naysayers, right? Saying no, or what, you can't do that, or that's not possible for you, or not right now.
Right.
And I think when people are talking about the thing that drives them, that passion, like you often notice the spark, right? Like you can see the spark in their eye. They're getting really excited. Their voice pitch might change a little bit. I feel like as leaders, as community members, as citizens, as family members, as parents, like being able to recognize that and see that and live in that moment and live in that space and either be the catalyst to make it move forward or have courage to say, yes, let's try that. Let's do it. To see that spark and not be the naysayer, I feel like is a task that's really challenging and hard because oftentimes we are taught to be so practical, but in that moment, like being able to make room for someone to work towards that passion, I think is really important. And it's tough work to be able to see it, but there's always a glimmer of spark, right?
Yeah, I agree. Acknowledging that spark and also the fear. So I know I mentioned on this, always do what you're afraid to do. And, one of the Olympians who medaled actually said he had played a number of sports and he knew, I think it was a swimmer, he knew swimming was his sport because he got very anxious and nervous every time before he did it. And he didn't get that way with other sports. And I think that's that feeling when you know this is what you're supposed to do, but it's very nerve-wracking and it makes you fearful, but you have to have the courage to do it because you care so much about that one thing that you're nervous you don't want to mess it up. It's also just daunting to face that you're headed in this huge purpose that's bigger than you. And so I think that's what we heard today, and that goes back to the definition we talked about courage. It's not about never being afraid. It's about doing the things you're most afraid to do.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to do them.
And probably remembering again, like process, right? Like it's not necessarily about that outcome, but like the joy that you find and the discovery that you find in the process of doing what it is that you're passionate about.
That's right.
Yeah, and I love that. We keep coming back to that process, and I'm struck by that. Right? It was I think 2 weeks ago where I personally made the decision to go on a 90-day pause of consulting, which was sort of my main work, to just really focus on how we can co-create this platform, and being that if we really focus here, like what could happen. And that still is a scary decision. It still is like, okay, there's no more checks coming in after this month, but then it was 4 days later that the Charlotte Podcast Festival reached out and asked us to do a live taping. And so Nate said that, like, when you make that leap, when you do that hard thing, like signs will start to happen along the way. And I am struck with just paying attention to that and just what, to me, it's like you hear people say, well, where will it be in 6 months? And as we say, like, we don't really know, but something's going to happen along the way. And there's this quote from the book Fearless. They're if you're listening, they're giving me heck because I got.
He had to pull out a quote, right?
Yeah, I had to pull one.
Right.
But literally, this is Shivani. This is what you said again. This is Dr. Pippa Grange. The book is Fearless, which is also one of Nate's songs. So if you haven't checked out Nate, we'll put the Progress as his recording artist name. But he's got a song called Fearless. Dr. Grange was a coach for the UK teams in the English Premier League rugby team. She's been all over the world. And she's really unpacking like different ways of growth and how we can overcome fear. And this is talking about winning. She says, winning deep feels completely and utterly different. Imagine this: success that has nothing to do with your worth as a person and everything to do with the joy of getting to know yourself as a human being. You'd no longer see winning in terms of a war with yourself and everyone else. You could cultivate a mentality that's about expansion and experience and connection to others, not dominance and gain. How much further might you go, and how different might it feel? And when I read that, I think that's everything we're doing. We're making room. We're growing together. We're trying to figure out what are we each capable of.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that it speaks to so many of the things that we continue to talk about, right? Like about the process, about the journey. and what happens along the way, right? The connections that we make, the deep connections that we make with people, and seeing each other and their purpose and their joy and their fears as well, and helping everyone kind of march along together.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people I really like what you said, and it's part of the excitement is seeing where this goes without knowing necessarily where the next stop is or where the end destination is. I often kind of viewed my life and sort of career path as kind of a downhill skier that goes through those checkpoints, the flags that goes through, and you find the next one, and then one happens to appear, and you're like, okay, that's the spot. Let me go to that spot. Not really knowing where the next one is, but as you go through and you look back, it's like, wow, that's a wild journey, but it was always that was the way I was supposed to go, even if it didn't make sense at the time. And I think that's what we're doing, is just kind of seeing what happens next, and and trusting just being part of this process with both of you has just been great.
Well, I love that, and we're, we started out all three of us. I'm laughing here. Wrote the term and ignited by action, right? Inspired by action. So, as we close out today, I'd love to hear, what's an action? What are you inspired to do that you may be fearful of, but the action could produce, right? What we're trying to create. And so, I'll say for me that I continue to put off writing. And I can tell when I do that because I start to create the space for it. I go through a period of I'll call it self-sabotage. I don't sleep as well. I don't take care of my self-health. And I heard a question from Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, about, what are you avoiding by doing that? And so for me, I can tell there's that belief that I'll just put this to the side. And so I'm struck by Nate saying, that's in you. You got to get it out. And it's not my responsibility to know what it is. It's my responsibility to create the time to do it. So that's something I'm committed to. Specifically, 2 to 3 days. I heard a guy who wrote the book Atomic Habits say, just write 2 sentences. So I'm going to start writing like a paragraph 3 days a week, and I know that's going to lead to more. So I'm curious for y'all. What are you inspired to do?
Yeah. So John and I have talked about this before, but I often term myself as a professional brainstormer. I love idea creating, right? So in my work around childhood advocacy and early prevention of childhood diseases and things, I love to sit around and brainstorm, right? It's food insecurity. Okay, what do we do about that? Let's make a flow chart. Let's think about all the community resources that we have. What I fear is putting it down on paper and presenting it out to people, right? So I love to create projects. I don't like to sum it all up and say, like, this is what I have done, or to even, whether it's publishing or speaking about it or creating posters, but this process, literally making me speak in front of this microphone and you all and answer questions, like, it is helping build some of my own courage to be like, I can talk about this stuff. I'm passionate about it. I believe in it, and I think that it's good work, and forcing myself to kind of go out there and write the reports, or make a presentation about something, and really share the work that not only myself, but like this tremendous team that I get to work with is working on to potentially, hopefully, better the lives of people. I think that that's something that I have not done and need to do in order to hopefully inspire more people to continue to do that kind of work.
Well, if you ever need space to do that, I'll work on writing. You can work on the presentation.
Perfect.
I love it. Yeah, mine is not dissimilar. I think this has been, and not to understate it, overstate it, whichever way we're going, this has been very outside of my comfort zone. And so I think I was, I haven't even shared this with you, but I had a lot of trepidation about doing this. Like, do I really want to put myself out there? I'm doing, like, is this really what we're going to do? Like, we have episodes. And so it has been a great experience, and I think it's been cathartic in a lot of ways for me. And like Shivani said, and you said it too, John, it has opened me up to, okay, now what's next? I can do more of that. And funny enough, writing is one of those things that for me, I have written things going back 10 to 12 years and have never like finished them. I have so many open books, kind of like what Nate said in terms of so many written songs. I even have like a screenplay.
Wow.
So,
wow.
But I've never actually done anything with them. Never really invested in it. And now it's interesting because my daughter, what she really likes to do is write and make books. And she has written like a series of these 2 characters and has 10 books that she's put together. And recently she asked me, hey, can we turn these into real books? How do you turn them into real books? And I feel like that's the universe telling me, you gotta get back to it. You gotta write. Like, and your daughter's telling you, like, if there's one person on this earth that I'll listen to,
Yes.
it's her. Like, so I feel like that's the push that I'm getting. No offense to my son, I listen to him too, but
And
her voice
I'm going to throw
resonates
out
a little
Kirby
more.
too.
Daddy's
just
daughter.
and Kirby.
Yeah, and Kirby. Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, John. I do want to have.
It was
a place
on
to
his
come
paper.
Yes,
I was just.
yes.
So I think we're very similar. So maybe we have something else collaborative coming soon.
There you go.
Boy.
Next book.
And
That's
the
right.
kids' books, I know that would be nothing you'd be interested in too, right? Not at
Don't have
all.
a
Yeah.
passion for children.
Well, I love that. It's like, I think as we, leave here with our listeners and community, is that when you start, I heard it from you, Brandon, is like channels open up, right? So you start one way, and we've even said that here, is that we're going to see how this goes, and it might lead to books or other things, right? And that you figure out where you're supposed to be and what to do. So we are so grateful that you as a listener continue to make room for us, to listen with us, to grow and co-create this community of what's possible when we all are honoring creativity, acting with courage, and being catalysts. So thank you for your time.
We invite you to continue making room with us. You'll find this episode and all of our exciting and meaningful conversations on Apple, Spotify, or really anywhere you choose to listen to podcasts.
Join the Making Room movement and get more info at makingroomwithus.com or follow us on Instagram at Making Room With Us.
Thank you for showing up for us and each other. Until next time.
You are wonderful and full of truth, just as you are. You are wonderful, so full of truth, just as you are. Oh. You are wonderful, so full of truth, just as you are, just as you are. You're welcome here, just as you are.